Hello. I am sorry I'm a couple of minutes late. Unfortunately, I've changed location and Google requested that I verify that I am who I say I am. So I am. It's me. Good to be back. I apologize for the lack of um, sort of warning of what I'm going to talk about today. I've been on the road and I have literally been in this one place now for all of an hour, but I was traveling last night and very early morning. So I am, no longer in Iceland. I'm in the United Kingdom. And so I wanted to make sure that I was all settled and sorted so that I could be online. So I didn't want to make any promises before I knew that I could make it, as I enjoy these sessions that we have together. What I thought I would talk about, though, for today is this idea of adding languages. Now, I find this interesting for a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, I've just been in environments where people have been introducing me as that guy that speaks all the languages, and I've also been doing some interviews as well for media. And the question always comes up: how many languages do you speak? Which languages do you speak? And so it made me think that actually it's probably a good topic to talk about. Some of you will be watching this and thinking, well, what's the deal? I mean, how many languages do you speak? Just answer the question. And I definitely see on my TikTok channel, people get quite frustrated with my vague answers. For example, the video I made about what the hardest language is, and have a number of people commenting, just get to the point, or he doesn't even say, or you could have made this video in 10 seconds, all these different things. And a similar thing, I imagine, is true for when I get to the question of how many languages do you speak. Others of you out there will also be like, I feel your pain. And so you know where I'm coming from. But I just want to kind of set the scene and say why it's such a difficult thing to answer in a very straightforward and honest manner. Um, Simply, when you're this into languages that you study many different languages from different language families and different groups and many languages within a family, it gets a little bit challenging to add them up. And I was having a conversation with somebody the other day where they said, they went on holiday to Finland and were just piecing together Finnish from knowledge of Estonian and other languages that they'd learned, but mainly Estonian, and bits of Finnish that they'd studied before. And all of a sudden, people were saying, "Oh, you speak Finnish too," and Finnish was added to this list. And what happens is people tend to just keep adding to our lists of languages when they see that you really like languages and you're kind of a serial language learner. They will tend to add to the list. So when you say no, I don't, they take that as meaning you're being maybe a bit shy, a bit embarrassed, sort of being even humble. And the truth is, and I get told that I'm humble by people, and I think it's a very nice thing to be told. I'd rather be seen as humble than be seen as boastful or bragging. I definitely would much prefer to be in that on that side of the fence than the other side. Could be to do with my cultural background and baggage, but that's just me. I'd rather be understated than overstated, and so the reason why this question of how many languages do you speak and adding languages, why it becomes tricky, is because first of all, it's not straightforward maths that you just add one and add another one and add another one and add another one. And I know that was a wonderful presentation that Anthony Lauder gave at the very first Polyglot conference many years ago, how to become a polyglot, learn a language, then learn another, then learn another, and keep adding another one until you become a polyglot. There's kind of some truth to it. Okay, so cards on the table, right? When you learn many, many languages, and that is basically your life, and that's what you do, there does get to a point where you get to a number of languages that you use and speak and deal with on a daily basis, where those languages are the ones that are the main sort of core of your being, your life, your existence. You use them in a very natural way. You get to repeat them, to recycle the grammar and the vocabulary. You cycle through all of that stuff constantly. So you retain those languages, right? But what you also can do, and I see this often, is you can start doing language projects as I do, and you sort of dive into other languages that are either related or unrelated, and you start to enjoy them. People outside start to add these languages up, so you end up with some crazy number of languages that you speak. And some people are very kind with their, or maybe over generous with their compliments about linguistic ability. So if you say a couple of sentences in a very convincing way, people say, "Oh, you speak the language so well. It sounds almost perfect. It's amazing. You've got the accent and you've all of these wonderful things." It's lovely to hear. What we have to do is remain grounded and also just take into account, okay, which language is this? Is this a language people are used to, non-native speakers or foreigners learning, or is it a language that rarely gets spoken by someone from outside of that linguistic community or the neighboring linguistic communities? And so therefore, is there sort of this congratulations and how amazing, this sort of praise, is it a bit too heavy? When we think about this, there's a few things that I would consider. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, it's valid to get a compliment. It's even nice to get a compliment. It's encouraging. It makes me feel good about what you're doing. So keep the compliments coming, I think, with people when they speak a language and they're trying to do their best. It's a very nice thing. As the person receiving the compliment, measure it against how you feel with the language. I mean, saying some nice phrases in a language doesn't equate to necessarily speaking the language in any fluent kind of manner, apart from knowing how to say these very basic phrases very quickly and get very used to them. And that is the start of the path to learning a language for sure. I was asked what it means to me to speak a language and to speak a language fluently. Now, you can debate this until the cows come home, and everyone's going to have different thoughts, different feelings, different theories on it. I'm just going to tell you what I think. As far as I'm concerned, if you speak a language to a point where you can convey what's going on in your head, your feelings, your emotions, your needs, you can work through the language and help people, and you can study and learn through the language. You speak the language. I mean, you might not know everything, you might still need to learn, but if you have got enough of the language that you can learn through the language, you speak the language. I mean, I'm not talking about sort of knowing a few phrases. I'm talking about you can talk about most of pretty much everything that you want to talk about in terms of, you know, your life, your surroundings, your environment, but you can also go on and add to it. So you could go to university, sign up for a course and learn a topic through that language, or you could work in a certain profession and work through that language. That for me is speaking a language fluently, in the kind of the most base sense of the term. I think is probably the most likely generally accepted way of describing it. I would say that's probably as unoffensive as possible, or inoffensive as possible. Oh my word! So I can't even speak English. So as inoffensive as possible. So I hope that a number of you can identify with that. Those of you who can't, I'd be super interested to know what else you'd add into that layers, because I'm always happy and open to refine or consider or even reconsider my thoughts and my conclusions. I see my ideas and me as a human being as on a path, and I learn constantly. So that's my kind of thought. Now, there are levels before you get to this magic sort of fluent, okay, that we're going to describe as this that I've just described now. The languages that you get to this magical fluency, and I'm not going to use the A1, B2, C1, whatever. I mean, it sits around a B1, B2 level, is this fluency usually. We're not talking C1, C2. These are not, I mean, as I said, I think in a couple of these sessions, me speaking to you right now, this live, these videos are max B2. I'm not speaking to you in a C1, C2 level of English right now. So if we take that as the standard, this, if you want the B1, B2, I would say B1, B2, okay? And you're already able to do quite a lot with the language. So let's say that you have a number of languages like that, and then you add other languages where your understanding, because the languages are similar. Let's take my example with Czech. I studied Czech at university in Prague, and I was definitely able to study through the medium of Czech and use Czech in the family environment I was living in. Quite arguably fluent in Czech at that point, given these kinds of standards. It wasn't perfect, but it was completely fine. I've since then sat in on and completed a B2 course, even though the course that I did years before was now graded as C1. I don't see my Czech potentially at the moment as C1 at all, but I would say that if I go back to Czech Republic very quickly, I will be getting back to having very normal conversations. That said, when I started looking at Slovak, my understanding of Slovak went really high really quickly, and I could start making up sentences in Slovak quite quickly, enough to take part in a competition at the Polyglot Gathering in Bratislava and give a presentation in Slovak. Then I never used it. And so people added Slovak to my languages when I did an interview many years ago. I'd just gone through this process of not long before of learning Slovak in a very relatively short amount of time. But as we've said before, when you learn something quickly and intensively, if you're not using it, it goes down very quickly. So my understanding of Slovak is probably still there. My reproduction and active knowledge of Slovak has all but gone. And so I would be very hard pressed to even say basic things in a convincing, authentic Slovak, unless I revise everything I've done till now in the language and come back to you in a couple of weeks, having done the same thing again. But even if I do that and I make a video in Slovak, I can almost guarantee you that in 3-4 months after I've made the video, I will still be in the same position I'm in now, understanding Slovak and not being able to speak it. I've been through this process with a number of languages. Slovene, for example, I've been through processes where I've done interviews in Slovene and then not used it, and it turns back into Serbian. I have been through this process with languages like Latvian, where I studied them, I was communicating, and then they just sort of drifted back. Finnish, same deal. And so there are a number of languages like that that I have spoken, have been added to my list of languages that I've studied. And this is why I always talk about the languages I've studied and not the languages I speak. I mean, my preference is to just let you decide. And one of you will say that I speak one language well, another one of you will say, no, you don't. Actually, it doesn't really matter to me personally what anybody thinks about my ability in any given language, because that perception and that opinion actually has zero effect on my reality with that language, whether I speak it with friends and family, whether I use it at work, whatever I do with it, it has zero effect, zero impact. I mean, zero impact, because I don't have any right to dictate what you think or to convince you even that I speak any language. As far as you're concerned, I could just speak English, and even some of you might think that I maybe don't speak English, and I'm reading off off a board or something. And you're entitled to think that too. I may have no language. I'm completely no language at all. And you're entitled to think that too. It's a bit silly, but you're entitled to think that. And my rights of where I am and who I am and what I think and what I want to do and how I behave and everything else, my rights, as far as I'm concerned, stop where your nose begins. I have zero rights to your thoughts. I have zero rights to your opinions about me. I have no rights at all, unless they're things that affect me negatively in a real, palpable way. You're free to think and to feel whatever you want. And so when I get asked the question about how many languages do you speak, and this adding languages to a list of languages, this is where I kind of draw a line and say, there are languages that I do use, and I'm very happy to say which ones they are. Sometimes, yeah, sounds like a script. That's hilarious. Sometimes, if it's a very badly written script, I imagine it's a script. But yeah, sometimes if I'm asked that question, I actually just prefer people to decide themselves. And the reason is that as soon as you yourself start going around saying, I speak this many languages, it opens you up to sort of, okay, but do you really? And why is that? And how? And you kind of get into this defensive mode of defending what you know. The very strange thing is, right, you could defend your knowledge at any given point, but, and this is the reality, is that your knowledge here and your knowledge 2 years time, 3 years time, 5 years time, 10 years time will change, because it's when we're not on this kind of linear thing where we just take everything and move along. It all changes the whole time. It changes with mood, it changes with situation, it changes with other things we learn that take over space in our heads, and we get out of practice, all of these things, right? So yes, studying a language, I think, is a safer thing to talk about, because you can't take away what somebody studied in the same way. It's you studied the language, right? So I mean, I studied Mandarin Chinese at university in Dalarna in Sweden, and I have university credits to show that I completed a number of courses in Chinese language, and no one can really take those away from me. I did them, I sat the courses, I passed the exams, and I completed all the coursework, and that's done. I did courses in Japanese, I did courses in Arabic, I did courses in Georgian. I've done courses at university in Helsinki in Finnish. I've done courses in Iceland, in Icelandic. I've done these courses, no one can take them away from me. They're done, and I've studied the languages. Not all to the same degree and depth, obviously, because doing 1 semester of Japanese does not equal doing 2 years of Chinese at university, for example. But still, there's a level of study there that can't be taken away. That said, now, if you were to ask me to speak Chinese, it would be nowhere near the level that it was when I finished my final exams. Same with Japanese, same with Arabic, same with Georgian, nowhere near. I would even say that Georgian, for example, much more than hello, how are you, my name is, I'm not going to be able to produce for you. If I see some things that I saw during the course, maybe I might be reminded again, and it might start coming back to me, but it's tough. So I hope talking about this in a very honest way helps those of you who don't know the situation of what it is like to try and answer what is a seemingly very simple question about how many languages you speak, to understand where that difficulty comes from. And for those of you who do, I hope that you can identify with it, and I hope that it helps you to feel confident and comfortable as well in your own skin and in your own knowledge and in your own experience, to say, yeah, do you know what? I recognize that as well, and it's fine, because it is fine. There's nothing wrong with anything that you do with this. I mean, just you be you, you do you, and what other people think and what other people say, it's really not important. I mean, Yeah, some people can be hurtful, and absolutely your feelings are valid in any situation like that. You're allowed to feel and experience things as you want, as I'm allowed to experience and feel things as I want. But what I want to just drive home is that their opinions do not change your reality. Feels like it goes for more than language, actually, that piece of advice. Other people's opinions about you, whatever they are, do not change who you are and what you do and what you know and what your experiences are. You are way more valid than their opinions of you, because their opinions of you are just what they thought and made up in their own heads, and they've got their own things going on. But you're way more important than that, and you're way more valid than that. And even if you're skewed in your ideas and you're wrong, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter when it gets down to it. You could have a completely warped idea of your language levels or what you've learned or what you've done or anything, but that's your business. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. It doesn't, and people either accept you or they don't accept you for that. And so this is kind of where I've landed in my life with many things, not just languages, but with many I've landed here. Like, seriously, yeah, this is kind of where I am. So I hope you found that useful. I'm going to have a look at your questions and see if I can answer something as well. I am sort of aware that a number of you joined. Hello. Thank you for joining. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow. And if you have specific questions, related to languages, if you have things that you want to work through with me on an individual basis as well, check out Patreon, because I do actually talk to people and work things out on an individual level as well. You're very, very welcome to do that. Okay, so merhaba, Türkçe biliyor musun? Evet. Evet. Çünkü ben Üsküp'te yaşıyorum ve bu yüzden Türkçe öğrendim. Orada hem Makedonca, hem Arnavutça, hem Türkçe konuşuyoruz. Ve evet, bu dili her zaman kullanıyorum. Evet. Привет, друг. Привет, Chanel. Как дела? Хорошо? Bună ziua din România. Bună ziua, Tiffany. Ce mai faci? Bine în România. Я правда, Поль, мою что скажете? Хорошо. Merhaba. Hi, Richard. Okay, I'm still confused on the three that I enjoy, but I love to add Latin and some others. Yeah. And it's fine to be focused, that you're still focused on the three that you have. Be focused on whatever you want. Absolutely, Tiffany. And then you can play with languages. Look, this is the one thing as well that I say, and this is where I think other people's opinions are just that, their opinions. You can play with whatever language you want to, whichever level you want to play with it. If you just want to learn how to say niceties in a language because you're going to go on holiday to that place and you don't have time to study it, but you do want to do something, it's also better than doing nothing. Even if you're sitting at home and you say, you know what, I want to learn how to write the Georgian script. It looks really nice. Just learn it. There's no commitment you have to make to then go any further with that. No one's going to come around, and sort of beat you over the head and say, well, if you don't learn any more Georgian than that, then it's no longer valid. Anything you want to do that brings you happiness and adds to your general knowledge of this world and its people is positive. It really is. It's super, super positive. I really do believe what Catalan said when she was quoted as saying, language is the only thing worth knowing, even poorly. And it's true. It's super, super true. Even if you can just say hello. I mean, my Georgian, right? I've told you my Georgian is awful. But I remember I was in Cyprus at the hotel and I heard the cleaning lady from the room next door. She was in the hallway, I was in the hallway, locking the door, and she said she was speaking on the phone in Georgian. I recognized it as Georgian because I'd studied Georgian. I didn't understand what she was saying. I understood it was Georgian. And I greeted her in Georgian, asked how she was. And she had this huge smile just from something really, really easy and simple. And that kind of thing is, so it's worth it. I mean, even though I didn't speak Georgian, I couldn't really say very much to her. Just greeting her and recognizing, acknowledging the language she was speaking, acknowledging her and her heritage and her language, and saying something in Georgian. First of all, it's surprising for many of these people because some of these languages people don't typically know anything of. They're not used to meeting many foreigners that come on holiday, particularly, and they recognize, you know, a language from the Caucasus. It's just, yeah, it's not that often that they will hear that unless they're from that region themselves. So yes, anything you want to do, Tiffany, is good. Okay. Let me see if there's any more. That sounded like a script. I think that's hilarious. That's hilarious. I love it. Hello from Seattle. Hello from Seattle. At the moment, I'm learning Spanish and Italian at the same time. Just wondering if you study multiple languages at once. Yeah, in fact, Jonathan, I did. My degree was in multiple languages. So at university, I had to study a minimum of 3 languages, and I studied 4. I studied French, Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese, and then I sat in on the Swedish language classes, and I did a year of Old Icelandic as well. And then I was also doing these language exchanges for other languages at the same time. So yes, I do. When I'm working full time, it's harder to do that. So at the moment, my focus is right now on Cornish and Irish. But it goes a lot more slowly because I'm doing 2 at once. I do have projects in other languages in between as well, but over like the last 2 years, I've been studying Cornish. I studied Scottish Gaelic actually for a year and a bit, and then I swapped over to Irish from Scottish Gaelic, and I kind of leveraged that knowledge to get to where I was in Scottish Gaelic, but in Irish. I converted my knowledge basically, and I've been doing that for maybe 10 months now, Irish. But I'm still very bad at Irish. I mean, I can barely say anything. So I mean, all I could say is like very. People ask me this on TikTok all the time. If I speak Irish, and I'm like, I can say basic things, but I'd feel a bit disingenuous making a video speaking in Irish, and I could make a video saying quite a lot of things in Irish if I put them together and I prepared it. But like off the cuff, just like this speaking now, I would find that extremely difficult in Irish, and I wouldn't do it in a very natural way. Yeah. But I actually really like the language. Cornish, though, I could probably say quite a lot of stuff to you in Cornish. It's not going to be very good grammar. I'll make mistakes. I'll miss some words. I'll get some things wrong. But I could communicate to you in Cornish, potentially. Yeah. I also use Cornish more often. But yeah, it takes time. Just slows things down. Let me see. Great to see you too, Rasmus. Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. How are you? Richard, I'd like to ask you, what language would you rather learn between these 3? Just hypothetically. Sinhala, Sindhi, or Burmese? Wow. Did a brief learning of Sinhala just for fun. Which one of those 3 would I most like to learn? Do you know what? I honestly do not know. I would probably need to, because I've not really even done much of a study of any of them. Burmese is the one that I am most familiar with out of those 3. But I would need to sort of investigate them. I kind of tend to do research and see which ones I think I'm going to get to use more easily. So I would probably do that. My gut reaction would lean more probably towards Sinhala or Sindhi, just because I don't know very much about them. But yes, I don't know which one I would choose out of the three. Thank you, Richard, for this. It really did come home to me. Oh, good, Chanel. I'm glad. Your words were very comforting. Thank you, to say the least. I definitely understand this topic deeply. Oh, thank you, Chanel. I'm glad that it resonated with you. I love that quote. Yeah, I love that quote too, Tiffany from Catalan. Richard, do you think that becoming a polyglot is a good investment to find a permanent position at government institutions, such as ministries of foreign affairs? No, I don't. I don't think it is. Focusing on certain languages that are useful for your particular government is probably a better bet, because you're likely to use them. But becoming a polyglot per se, very, very few jobs will require you to speak more than 4 or 5 languages max. Very few, anywhere in the world. So if you're not doing this, like multiple language learning, because you love it, seriously, it doesn't, like, I do interviews, I've done TV things, I've done radio interviews, I've done newspaper articles and interviews. I have worked using lots of languages, and I can honestly tell you that yes, they've been really useful as an addition to my work in certain projects, for certain projects, but I actually have zero financial gain from speaking this many languages, really. Zero. Like, I don't, no one gives me anything in particular for it. For my job, yeah, it was handy, and we potentially some projects that we could do that I could help with that in the past that otherwise couldn't have helped with, but there would have probably been another way round doing it. But yeah, I mean, no company's looking for someone that speaks even eight languages. No one's looking for that. No one. Very, very rare that you'd have a job that you would need to speak more than 4 or 5 languages. Just the way it is. But yeah, if you're looking at foreign affairs and that kind of ministry work, look at the languages that they're looking for, things that are important, and focus on those. If that's what your goal is, and if some of them gel, you can become a specialist actually as well for like government bodies in certain regions and languages. So that might also be an option you're interested in. So for example, if you have a particular penchant for a country in the Middle East, or a country in Asia, or a country in Africa, or a country anywhere in the world, and you want to focus in on that, and also get to know the culture, the politics, and everything about life there, then that can be useful for a lot of positions. I mean, not just the things that people sort of jump to immediately, like, oh, you could be a spy. Not thinking of that necessarily, although possibly it's an option, who knows. But what I'm thinking of more is business relations, so ties with businesses. So, for example, if you become very well versed in local languages, cultures, traditions, politics, and business in a given country, you can become some sort of attaché to that country on behalf of your country, to grow ties and links with those communities, and that's valuable for business. It's valuable for the country. So that would be my sort of advice to you. I hope that helps. Tom Touch. I'm learning Spanish, Russian, and Ukrainian. Spanish is my primary and most advanced. I'm getting crazy interference between Russian and Ukrainian. Yeah, I can understand that. Even though I'm a native Polish speaker, you will do, because Ukrainian and Russian are both from that same branch of Slavic languages, and there will be interference. I'm not surprised at all. It will take time. It will take a lot of practice, maybe even speaking them back to back to try and separate them out. Some people find it too frustrating. So see how you go with that as well. Sometimes we have to make hard decisions when we learn languages. We have to stop, like with me for Slovak. I mean, I realized that speaking Slovak, Czech, and Polish was very, very difficult. So the last times that I've been to Slovakia, I just spoke Czech again and didn't even try speaking Slovak, except for like niceties, nech se páči, when I was giving people things or saying thank you or whatever else. I would use words then, but otherwise, I spoke Czech. Hi Richard, you're a true inspiration. Thank you. You speak French like a native. Oh wow, that's a huge thing to say, but thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Watching your clips gives me a lot of motivation. Take care. Thank you very much, Paul. That's very kind. From Paris. Oh, thank you. I've done that several times, a lot of languages, and then dabbled in the past few years. Yeah, exactly, Chanel. It's a good thing to do. Why not? Richard, when it comes to language learning, do you prefer being disciplined over being motivated? That's a really good question, Helen. A really good question. Both. If you're disciplined to the point that you make yourself sick, depends where you are in your life as well, right? So I've had stages in my life where I've had to be disciplined to get through certain things. Like when I learned German, I had to pass an exam in German. I had to be very disciplined to get through the material to study, and it was good. When I did the Estonian challenge last year, I had to be disciplined and do it every single day. Sometimes I didn't feel like it and I had to kind of work through it. If I know I can do that over a short period of time, it works. If I try and do that over the long term, I don't think it's going to work so well because I think it will affect my motivation and therefore my emotional response to wanting to learn. So there's a nice mix to be had there, and it depends on the reasons and the whys and the wherefores and the where I am in my life. Heard you're a big fan here. Oh, nice to see you. Thank you. Okay, let me see. I have two questions. For Spanish, why is it the Andalusian accent is the one that you chose to adapt? Okay, I didn't choose Andalusian. So the way I pronounce Spanish normally, so mi forma de hablar español es así, porque vivía con malagueño, because I live with people from Malaga, and that's the way they spoke, and I think that imprinted on me most strongly and has stayed with me. And then other Spanish speakers that I've had a lot of contact with have been from Latin America. And so my accent's kind of drifted a bit in Spanish from this kind of Southern Spanish, Andalusian style way of speaking to a kind of mid-Atlantic and then back to Andalusian again. But it tends to center back to more of an Andalusian style of speaking. But yeah, I didn't choose it. It was my friends that spoke to me, and then I went to university in Malaga as well. And also, when learning several languages, how do you avoid burnout? I don't avoid burnout. I look out for it and stop myself before it happens. I take breaks. I try to set myself goals and targets that are reasonable to keep for a longer period of time than just a month or two, and that helps. Sometimes I make hard decisions. No language study for a month. I can't do it at the moment. I've got too many other projects on. During the time of the conference, for example, it's very difficult for me to study languages in the same way. I will use my languages, but I can't really study them in the same way because I've got so many other things happening. And I sit down to study and then I think, oh, I've got that email to write, or I've got to do that other thing. Do you get that as well? That you sort of just think, oh, I can't think of anything else except for the things I have to do. My to-do list is growing and growing and growing. Yeah. So yes, I take breaks. Have you ever met Matthew Yolden from Babel? Yes, I have. He speaks Irish and Cornish. Does he? Has he learnt those now? I didn't know. Irish sounds familiar, but I don't think he spoke Cornish when I met him. I met him years ago, though. I met him in Thessaloniki at the Polyglot Conference, which is like a long time ago now. That's when I met him. Met him and his brother, and they were lovely. They're very nice people, very sweet, very, very nice. And I'm connected to him somewhere as well on social media, so maybe I should reach out and see. I had no idea that he did some Cornish. That's amazing, because it'd be great to speak to him about that, and Irish as well. I mean, my Irish is not great, but yeah, Cornish is getting better. I've just done the second grade exam. Hopefully, that will come back with a good result. You're maintaining your Russian, Chanel. Good. And getting French speaking and Arabic too. Wow, these are languages you're focusing on at the moment. Fantastic, Chanel. I love it. A big thank you to you for taking the time to answer all the questions. Oh, you're welcome, Paul. I do my best to answer as many questions as I possibly can. It's not always easy because I don't always have the time, and it's quite difficult to see all of the questions. So, but otherwise, yes, that's great. Okay. Okay. Now, unfortunately, Chanel, the Arabic script is so small for me to read in these chat boxes that I cannot make it out. I can see it's Arabic, but I can't read it because it's too small for me, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would try and answer, or at least read it out, but I can't. I can't see it. Olá, Richard, uma pergunta para você. Qual conselho que você daria para alguém que nunca aprendeu uma outra língua e que tem medo de começar? Para uma pessoa lusófona, por exemplo, de Brasil, é sempre melhor aprender uma língua mais fácil. Então, para você, isso seria uma língua como o espanhol, porque é uma língua muito semelhante a português. E você não vai ter os mesmos problemas para aprender a gramática e o vocabulário da língua. E para começar a falar, para comunicar as ideias, para falar com outra gente, seria um processo muito mais fácil para você. Então, isso acho que é uma coisa, um método para as pessoas com medo de falar, que é sempre melhor. Porque começar a aprender uma língua bem diferente, com uma gramática completamente diferente, bem mais complicada, com coisas muito diferentes da gramática de você. É sempre melhor começar a falar uma língua que é mais fácil, porque é da mesma família, do mesmo grupo de línguas que você já fala. Let me see. If you're wanting to work for the government with certain languages, you could work for the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, Foreign Service Institute. Yeah, if you're in the US, potentially yes, they are all options. I guess, Chanel. So the Foreign Service in the US, the State Department, is a place where they have language exams, for example, and you do language exams, and you can keep studying and redoing the exams over and over again as well to maintain a level. So it's quite cool, that system in the US. Other countries in the world will have slightly different ways of doing this. Halil, I think because obviously from your name and also from you spoke in Turkish, so Turkey might function a slightly different way, and the people that are interesting for Turkey may not be the same as for other governments, but it's worth checking out. A minha esposa só fala português, mas quer aprender outras línguas, mas ela não acredita que é capaz de ficar frustrada por não poder falar bem logo no início. Sim, isso é a coisa melhor para fazer isso com espanhol, por exemplo. Espanhol de um país perto do Brasil. E fazer isso pode ser também uma língua artificial, como o Esperanto, que é uma língua já desenhada para ser uma língua fácil para aprender. Pode ser também interlíngua, que é uma língua também feita para ser uma língua fácil para a compreensão de todos os falantes de outras línguas da mesma família de línguas, incluso anglófonos também. Também são duas línguas feitos por ser humanos, mas também pode ser melhor com o espanhol também. Isso também funcionaria bem. Okay. Is it bad that I don't put much emphasis on accents when I learn by myself? Depends what you want to do. If you're not looking to speak and you're not interested in speaking with a particular accent, then no, do you is what I say. But if you want to speak with an accent that sounds close to speakers of the language, then you do need to do something with it. You're like paying attention to the sounds at least. The accent is less important than the pronunciation. The two are very combined and have an overlap, I know, but if you can at least produce the sounds of the language that they are comprehensible to speakers of the language, the accents are less important. So if I speak to you in a French accent like this in English, you understand what I'm saying to you, even though it's not the same way that I talk, you see, normally in English. It's not a problem. But it doesn't matter. It's still clear English. It is very clear if I speak like this. You can understand what I am saying. It doesn't matter that my intonation is a bit different because of the French, and that my pronunciation is slightly different because my accent is more French. It doesn't matter. So, and so it goes with any language. The only time I'm going to kind of preface and caveat this is when it's a language where they're not used to hearing foreigners learn the language. Then they find it more difficult to bend their ear. Do you have any plans or had any plans to make a brand new language learning app platform? If you did, what would it be like? Oh, wow. Yeah, I think it'd be a lot of fun to do something like that. I mean, it's been done a lot. I always feel a bit weird going into that space, I've got to be honest. But yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, I put out lots of advice and stuff, so I mean, the material's probably going to be easier to cover now. But yeah, I mean, why not? I just don't have so much time to do it, unfortunately, or the know-how or the support. As I mentioned, I mean, I don't really make any money off any of this. It's not really something that supports me and my family and my life. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely be, to be able to put time in to do that, I would need support to do it, because when you're not working on other things, you have to work on something else. So yeah, I can understand quite a bit of written and spoken Ukrainian. Speaking, on the other hand, is still super hard. Absolutely. Hopefully it improves over time. Not in a hurry. No need to be in a hurry for it at all. Yeah, just keep plugging away at it and see how it goes. Oh, one last question. If there would be another Hispanic accent from any country that speaks Spanish that you've loved to pick up, which one would it be? Well, Mexican, of course. It has to be. I'd have to have like a Mexican, a Cholula accent. Puebla, Cholula accent would be good for me going to Polyglot conference, right, in October, speaking with a Cholula accent. Imagine that. That'd be great. Yeah, I mean, Mexican accent's nice, generally. There are so many different Mexican accents, so I'm not going to say Mexican accent. There are so many. They're so different and varied. The people I know from Mexico all speak differently. It would be good to speak Mexican Spanish, especially when I go to order a coffee and I ask for a straw, and I'm using a Spanish word that sounds really bad in Mexico. So very quickly when I went there, I learned popote for straw, because the other word in Spanish has another meaning very closely linked that even Spanish speakers from Spain are aware of. But yeah, that would be my answer. Let me see. Is my daughter still learning Korean? I'm not sure if she is at the moment. She's had quite a lot of exams and other things to do for maths and stuff. She kind of dipped into it a lot, but I don't know if she is actively. I don't kind of follow her that much on what she does. If she picks a language, for example, if she wants to talk to me about it and discuss it then, fine. But otherwise, I kind of don't want to put pressure on her. I want her to have her own life and her own interests. And she actually likes maths and computer science. That's what she likes at the moment. So I support that as much as I possibly can. Let me see. Ótimo conselho. Muito obrigado. De nada. Só para você. É ótimo. One question. If you only have 1 hour per day, would you recommend to learn 2 languages at the same time, 30 minutes each? Or would that hinder our global progress in those languages? Gracias. Molt bé. Sí, m'agrada la qüestió. Sí, doncs, for that, I would say, depends what you're learning them for. I mean, if you're learning 2 languages because you want to learn 2 languages eventually, why not just learn one now and the other one later? Is the first question. So I'd ask myself these questions. What's the rush to learn both now? Do I need to learn both right now? If you do split your time, you split your energy, you basically add to the time it takes to learn both languages. Are you happy with the time you add to learn both languages? Will they become confusing? So ask yourself those questions, and then hopefully it should make your answer clearer. Hello from Poland. Hello from the United Kingdom. Good to see you. Yeah. I believe Matthew Yolden has Irish origins. Yeah, I'm not surprised actually. He has replied that with one of his mother tongues when he talked about the evolution of languages, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay, could be. He learned Cornish quite late indeed, but I don't know if he speaks it fluently. It would be interesting to know. Yeah, it would. It'd be super interesting, Paul, to know. I mean, Cornish is a really nice language. It takes time to get into it, but it's a really nice language. I like it a lot. But yeah, I mean, if he does, I would love to talk to him about it, or even in it. Is there a chance that a polyglot gathering will be in Georgia? Polyglot gathering, I don't know. I don't look after the polyglot gathering, but who knows? I don't know if that was an option they offered, actually. They offered other options during the polyglot gathering in Warsaw. I personally would like to organize something in Georgia because I think Georgia is amazing. It's one of my, I mean, like Tbilisi is gorgeous. I would love to organize something in Georgia. Maybe that's something we can do. Organize like a language event in Georgia. That would be cool. I would definitely be up for doing that. So many cool languages to explore in the Caucasus. Tever missä olet toissa? Okay, terve. Missä olet toissa? What's my job? So my job is actually with languages. So I give advice on social media for social media management projects on how to manage and work on multiple languages in various cultures across the globe, on how they can be managed, how they can be staffed, how we decide if people have got the language skills necessary to work on certain things, to make sure that we're making the best use of people. So I kind of work in recruitment assessment, project management, and project execution, and also give advice as well to companies that want to work in various markets, languages, as and when it's needed. And then also I would do quality assurance as well, and be able to investigate issues with language, for example, that occur, to get to the bottom of what's happened. And I'm able to sort of, one of my strengths, I guess, is that because I've studied so many languages, when we assess people and evaluate people, I can do it across a range of languages to make sure that we take into account the differences in languages. So a mistake in one language and the equivalent in another might be quite different, for example. So for a language, just to give you an example, a language like French is, for French speakers, actually quite difficult to write because of all of the agreements and silent letters, and this gets complicated for French speakers. So a lot of people are not able to write in a, or to write for certain clients because of this, because they maybe are not so comfortable, or they don't pay close enough attention to the detail of the grammar. And then for other languages, it might be different things that are wrong. So a language like Spanish, for example, is a lot easier to write than French, just because basically write what you say. I mean, there are exceptions for certain variations of Spanish, but generally speaking, okay, the V and B or something like that is probably the most challenging thing, and some people don't know where to put the accent mark. But I mean, if you speak it out loud and you know where the accent mark is, it's not rocket science with Spanish. So it depends on that. What they, what you find with Spanish is people have trouble with punctuation. So people won't know how to formulate, for example, greetings with the right punctuation marks in the right place. They might copy. What tends to happen, particularly, is they so used sometimes to English that they'll copy the English way of writing, and put it on Spanish, which is slightly different. But yeah, they're the kinds of things. Do you have any? I hope you don't mind me answering that in English. Fortunately, my Finnish is not up to doing that. Do you have any strong opinions on reading, writing, speaking, listening for language learning? I feel that speaking, listening is harder, but is more transferable to reading, and vice versa. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with you that just because you can read a language well and you know a lot of vocabulary from reading, doesn't necessarily you then speak the language at the same level. Absolutely. Whatever you want to do with the language, you need to do that thing and practice that thing. So if you want to get good at reading literature, you need to read a lot of literature. If you want to get good at speaking about a certain topic, you need to practice speaking about that topic. If you want to get good at writing, you need to write. And these things do have some overlap, but you're not going to get there if you don't do the activity. Hello, Richard. Question: does it make a difference in approach learning many languages from the same family than learning many families? Okay. Kind of. Yeah, kind of. Depends on the languages. It depends on why you're doing them. But yes, that's quite a long question to answer. Unfortunately, I can't believe I haven't got to the end of all of your questions. I'm so sorry. I haven't even looked at the Instagram questions. There are so many wonderful questions as well. I'm really sorry. I have to go. I've just looked at the time and I have to disappear. But thank you. I will see if I can come back to some of the other questions again. I do apologize if I didn't get to your question. It wasn't something that I aimed to do. I really hoped to get through all of them. We just have a lot more questions than I could possibly get through today. But I will do my best to come back and answer them again next week. And I'll see if there are any questions as well that I can answer in other ways. So I will see if there are things that I can do to answer your questions elsewhere too. I'm doing things like this on TikTok at the moment. So if you want to check out my TikTok, people are asking me very often to describe, like I made this video on what the hardest language is, and then people are saying, well, now, well, first of all, do you speak a language? And so I make a couple of videos speaking in the language, and I find that a little bit boring, if I'm honest, because it doesn't really, I mean, for exactly the reason of the title of this live, I'm not going to convince you if you think that I'm reading a script that I speak the language, and I don't really want to or need to or have to. Speaking it, though, I do appreciate for some people is exciting for me to see if I actually speak it, what my accent is like, how well I communicate, some basic ideas. But it is just that basic ideas. I mean, these are short clips. But the thing that is exciting that people have been asking me to do is to describe why certain languages are hard or easy. And so I made a video about Greek, about the similarities and why Greek. Someone said to me, well, Greek isn't related to anything. I'm like, Greek, it's related to loads of things. It's so cool, and it's influenced so many languages. And then I had a similar question about Albanian, and now I've got a number of questions about other languages too. So have a look and see if you've got any ideas for me that you'd like me to cover as well. Feel free. But until then, pleasure to spend an hour with you again. Really, really enjoyed it. Thank you for all of your questions. And again, so sorry if I didn't get to them. Remember to like, remember to follow, remember to share, remember to come back again and to keep in touch. And if you do want specific help, there's always a Patreon link. You can get it on the Speaking Fluently website. There's a little link there. You can click on it. And if you fancy treating me to a coffee, feel free. The coffee link's also there as well. Hopefully one day we'll get to a point where I'll be able to fund putting more things together through Patreon and the coffee link, so that I can take some of the other work that I do away and focus more on producing content that hopefully you will enjoy and yeah, find useful. All the very best. Take care. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.